November 1944. 30,000 feet above the German countryside, a young American pilot from Kansas flies his P-51 Mustang alongside a massive formation of B-17 bombers. This is his 37th combat mission. He has watched friends explode in midair, has seen parachutes fail to open, and believes he has already experienced everything this war can offer. Then something appears on the horizon that immediately tells him he is wrong. It is moving faster than anything he has ever seen. There is no propeller, no obvious exhaust, no familiar engine sound. Just a sleek aircraft with swept wings closing the distance so quickly that his Mustang feels as if it is frozen in the sky. Before he can react, the aircraft tears straight through the bomber formation. 4 bombers erupt into smoke and fire. Crews die in seconds. And the aircraft that killed them is already gone, shrinking into the distance, unreachable. Instinct takes over. The pilot pushes his throttle forward and gives chase. Then his radio crackles with an urgent command from his commanding officer. Break off pursuit immediately, do not follow, return to the bombers. The order makes no sense. American fighter pilots are trained to attack, not retreat. But this order will save his life. Because the aircraft he tried to chase was the Messerschmitt Me 262, the world's first operational jet fighter, and it was more than 100 miles per hour faster than anything the Allies had in the sky. Chasing it was not bravery. It was suicide. This is the story of the aircraft American pilots were ordered never to chase, the weapon that arrived too late to save Germany but early enough to change aviation forever. In 1944, aerial combat was governed by simple mathematics. Speed, altitude, and position decided who lived and who died. A faster aircraft could choose when to fight and when to escape. A slower aircraft had no such choice. The P-51 Mustang, the finest American fighter of the war, could reach about 437 miles per hour. The P-47 Thunderbolt could push close to 440. The P-38 Lightning topped out around 414. These were excellent aircraft, machines that had helped the Allies seize control of the skies over Europe. But the Me 262 flew between 540 and 559 miles per hour. This was not a small advantage. It was a gap so wide that no amount of pilot skill could overcome it in level flight. If a Me 262 did not want you behind it, you would never catch it. You could push your engine to its limits, burn fuel at a reckless rate, and strain every mechanical part of your aircraft, but the jet would simply pull away until it vanished. P-51 pilot John Murphy later described his first encounter with a jet in the autumn of 1944. His immediate impression was that he was standing still. The jet's speed seemed unreal. He knew it was hopeless to chase it, but curiosity drove him to try anyway. Murphy survived that curiosity. Many others did not. Speed alone would have been frightening enough, but the Me 262 carried weapons that made it truly deadly. It was armed with 4 30mm 108 Malawian Quachars cannons. Each shell was heavy and packed with high explosive. Against a B-17 bomber, only 4 hits were required to destroy the aircraft. Against a fighter, a single hit was often enough to tear it apart. By comparison, American .50 caliber machine guns typically required 20 or more hits to achieve the same result. German jet pilots developed a brutally efficient tactic. They approached bomber formations from behind at extreme speed, opened fire from around 600 meters, held the trigger for 2 seconds, and then disappeared before the escorts could react. The entire attack lasted less than 10 seconds. In those 10 seconds, multiple bombers could be destroyed. By early 1945, Me 262 attacks accounted for some of the most devastating bomber losses of the war. American commanders began to understand the terrifying implications. If Germany ever managed to deploy hundreds of these jets at once, the entire strategic bombing campaign could become unsustainable. The response came not from panic, but from analysis. Colonel Irvine Dregner of the 357th Fighter Group recognized that chasing jets was pointless. He understood that the key was not pursuit, but interception. His calculations showed that 4 P-51s could trap and destroy a Me 262, but only if they began with the advantage of altitude and position. Without those conditions, pursuit was futile. Doctrine changed. Fighters were ordered to stay close to the bombers, turn into attacking jets, and disrupt their firing runs. If a jet attacked and then fled, it was to be allowed to escape. Leaving the bombers to chase a faster aircraft only guaranteed disaster. This was not cowardice. It was mathematics. The moment a fighter pilot abandoned the formation to pursue a jet, the bombers were left exposed, and the jet could simply turn back and strike again. Despite its terrifying speed, the Me-262 had a fatal weakness: its engines. The Junkers Jumo 004 turbojets were fragile, temperamental machines. They required 8 to 15 seconds to accelerate from idle to full power. Sudden throttle movements could cause catastrophic engine failure. During takeoff and landing, the jet was almost helpless. Allied pilots learned to exploit this vulnerability. On October 7, 1944, Lieutenant Urban Drew destroyed two Me-262s during takeoff, diving on them while they were still slow and unable to accelerate. For a few brief seconds, the fastest aircraft in the world was slower than a Mustang in a dive. By April 1945, Allied squadrons routinely arrived over known jet airfields before bomber formations, waiting to catch the jets at their most vulnerable moments. Germany produced more than 1,400 Me-262 airframes, but the reality of war meant that only a fraction ever reached combat readiness. Fuel shortages crippled operations. Pilot training was cut to the bone. Replacement pilots arrived with minimal flying hours and little experience. Engine failures were common. Many jets were lost to accidents during takeoff and landing. German records show that more Me-262s were destroyed on the ground or lost to mechanical failure than were shot down in aerial combat. The aircraft represented the future of aviation, but it had been born into a nation already collapsing under the weight of industrial defeat. The men who flew the Me-262 were among the most experienced fighter pilots Germany had left. Walter Nauertny, one of the highest-scoring aces in history, became the first commander of an operational jet unit. In November 1944, after delayed takeoff, he was caught alone on landing approach by American Mustangs. His final radio transmission was simple and chilling: "I am on fire." He died when his jet struck the ground and exploded. Johannes Steinhoff, another legendary ace, survived a horrific takeoff accident in April 1945 when his Me-262 crashed and burned. He endured years of surgeries and permanent disfigurement, yet later rose to become chairman of NATO's military committee. Heinz Bahr, the most successful jet pilot of the war, scored 16 victories in the Me-262, but even his skill could not change the outcome. Individual excellence could not overcome industrial collapse. Adolf Gorland, Germany's most famous fighter leader, believed that if the Me-262 had been deployed earlier and in greater numbers, it could have changed the air war. His elite unit, Jagdverband 44, gathered some of the highest-scoring aces in history, yet they never had more than a handful of jets operational at one time. Fuel was so scarce that aircraft were hidden in forests and towed to runways by oxen. In the final days of the war, rather than surrender their jets intact, the pilots destroyed them with grenades dropped into the engines. The jet age ended in smoke and fire on German airfields. But the story did not end there. Allied intelligence moved quickly to capture surviving jets. Under Operation Lusty, Me-262s were shipped to the United States and Britain, where engineers dissected every detail. Test pilots like Eric Brown flew them and confirmed what combat had already shown. The Me-262 was not a dogfighter, but a high-speed interceptor designed for slashing attacks. Its swept wings, axial flow engines, and combat lessons directly shaped the next generation of fighters. The American F-86 Sabre and the Soviet MiG-15 both traced their lineage to German research on the Me-262. In the skies over Korea, pilots on opposite sides of the Cold War flew aircraft born from the same wartime innovation. Today, the Me-262 sits silently in museums. Its engines are cold. Its guns are empty. Visitors walk past without realizing they are looking at the moment aviation changed forever. The aircraft did not win the war. It could not. It arrived too late, in too few numbers, with engines too fragile and a nation too broken to support it. But it showed the future. And it taught a lesson that still defines air combat today. Speed alone is not enough. Position matters more than velocity. Sometimes the bravest decision a pilot can make is not to chase.